Welcome to the NGConnects Podcast, where national gypsum team members and industry leaders share insights and advice to solve construction and design challenges. We obsess over the details to help you build better. Hi, I'm Chris Whitmire with National Gypsum Company, and in this episode, I talk with Warren Barber about the benefits of roof coverboard. Warren Barber is the product sales manager of specialty systems for DEXcell at National Gypsum. He's an industry veteran of over 30 years. He is a self-identified building science guru. He manages sales and product development for the DEXcell family of fiberglass mat and cement low-slope roof products. Low-slope roofs form a critical barrier against the elements on commercial buildings. They often house many of the building's mechanical components that place additional stresses on the roof assembly. Today, we'll talk about the role hard coverboard can play in extending the life of the roof assembly. Before we get started, the audience should know National Gypsum provides 4 types of roof coverboards through the DEXcell Roof Boards brand. Warren, it's a pleasure to have you here today. You've been a great mentor and friend to me over the years, and I've always appreciated and respected your knowledge of the building products industry, and not just the building products industry, but just the building science piece in all this. As I said in the opening, you're a building science guru. I can certainly attest to that. So
let's back up on that. Thanks, Chris. It's a privilege to be here, and this is going to be a lot of fun, I think, and hopefully we can get invited back to do this. But the building science gurus are really smart people, and I'm not one of those.
Well, I can attest to that, too. You're extremely intelligent.
But building science is very important, and so one of my life principles is always be a lifelong learner, and we always need to be studying and learning. So you go back 1999, a sales rep called me and said, "What's our response to the Massachusetts Energy Code?" And my question was, what in the heck is the Massachusetts Energy Code? But what it was about, it was enacted in 2003. It's about energy efficiency, air tightness in buildings. So that, for me, started my mecca, my learning around building science. And the neat thing is these glass mat products for the walls and for the roof fit into that building science story and contribute to healthy buildings. And so it's fun to work on products that actually work and enhance the performance of the building and improves the life of the people underneath the roof.
I like that mantra, a student of the game.
Yes,
and
always be a student of the game.
Well, and you are certainly an all-star. So,
well, thank you.
Well, let's get into the type of roofs we're going to discuss today. Let's just start there. What are the 4 types of roof coverboards that are out there, and maybe get into a little bit about where we might see these?
Yeah, great question. So when people say, "What do I do?" and I say I help manage a roof board for National Gypsum Company, they say, "Oh, do you sell shingles too?" And shingles would be steep slope. So low slope roofing is where our boards fit. That would be what you think to be commercial roofing. Some people call it flat roofing. No roof is ever flat unless you want to have a swimming pool up on the roof of it. So low slope would have a pitch to it to drain the water off. Generally, it's considered to be 2 and 12 or 3 and 12. So for every foot of length you have on that roof, you're going to have a pitch of 2 or 3 inches. So again, you want to be moving that water off that roof to a drain, to a scupper, about keeping the roof dry.
Okay. What are the benefits of these roof coverboards?
Great question. So we like to make the distinction. There's a lot of different coverboard technologies out there. We talk about hard coverboards, and we think there's some inherent value in having a hard coverboard versus some of the other technology out there. But really, the benefit is to have a flat surface, a smooth surface, to put your weatherproofing or your waterproofing on top of that. So you're going to have your insulation, you'll have a coverboard, and then you'll have we call it weatherproofing. So it's about keeping the building dry. So benefit there is to have a smooth surface to put your membrane on top of. We're going to talk about fire today. We'll talk about wind today. We'll talk about impact resistance today. All benefits for using a coverboard. And the interesting little side story. We met with a prominent roof consultant a couple years ago. He came into our trade show booth, and everybody kind of gathered around this guy, and he said, "Let me tell you the best thing about your coverboards." And so everybody leaned in because this was going to be profound. And so he said,
I'm leaning in.
Yes, see, I got you.
Yeah.
And so he says, "The best thing about your boards is they don't do anything." And we all kind of leaned back and thought, what? And you know what? He was exactly right, because he said, your boards just lay there. They don't expand, they don't contract, they don't get thicker, they don't get thinner. They just lay there. And again, protect the insulation below, protect the waterproofing above. And the more I thought about it, it made perfect sense.
Sure.
And I've told that story. He doesn't know it, but I've told that story 1,000 times before, because that's really, we're there to protect, but we don't cause a scene in that roof. We're just the basis to build a high-performance roof from. So that's just a few of the benefits for using a hard cover board. And it's about protecting the owner's investment, about protecting the contractor's reputation. You're not going to have callbacks like you might when you exclude having a cover board in your system.
Well, you're a building science guru, but you're also a great storyteller as well, too.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Known that over the years. So let's get into the selection process of the different roof cover boards that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of maybe walk me through, how do you select the right one? What are the benefits, the pros of each one? Just walk through each of those for a little bit.
Absolutely. So on the surface, no pun intended, but on the surface, either your roof system, you're going to glue it down or you're going to screw it down. So that part's easy. But really, we like to say low slope roofing is like playing chess. It's very complicated. So you have different types of decks. A metal deck on the roof, a concrete deck on the roof. You might have wood. A wood structure, whether it's planks from old warehouse buildings or new construction out west. You've got OSB or plywood, wood decks, a number of different decks, depending on where the building is, depending on the environmental factors, then that'll determine whether, and also what type of waterproofing system you're putting down, that'll determine whether you're going to mechanically attach the roof or you're going to adhere it. Or sometimes you'll mechanically attach the lower part of the assembly and then adhere the upper part of the assembly. So we have DEXcell glass mat roof board. That would be for mechanically attached systems where you're going to put a screw and a plate and you're going to fasten the system down into the decking below. We have DEXcell FA. FA stands for fully adhered. So that would be your glue down system. So maybe you have a concrete deck and you don't want to penetrate that with fasteners or fracture it with fasteners. So you're going to adhere all the different layers there. If you're in Florida with high wind uplift, maybe you're going to mechanically attach, maybe you're going to adhere. So, or if you have a high-rise building, downtown Charlotte, downtown Chicago, you've got different wind requirements. So number of different systems that you can put your cover boards into. So that's really, we have 4 different boards. We have a cement board. I didn't mention that. That can be mechanically attached. That can be adhered. That's really intended for applications where you need greater wind uplift or you need additional moisture resistance in a paper mill or a food processing center, cold storage, where you need moisture protection. Cement board works there. And then we have hail solutions. We're going to talk about hail a little bit later, I think. So we have half-inch DEXcell FA for multiply systems, and we've got DEXcell FA VSH, which is our solution for single-ply roof system. So it's complicated. Yeah. So there's hundreds of choices of different types of assemblies that you can put together. And part of our role is to assist consultants, to assist building owners in what type of products to put into their roof. And again, we're trying to extol the virtues of hard cover boards.
Yeah, we'll certainly get into the hail piece. I know we'll get into a little bit of the uplift, wind uplift. We'll touch on that here in a little bit as well. But before we get into that, what are some of the other big threats when we start talking about low slope roofs? How does one prolong the longevity of those roofs?
Well, a lot of environmental threats is, like we mentioned before, wind impact, hail impact, human impact. We're going to talk about that today. Fire, obviously fire resistance with gypsum board, cement board, big advantages for using that there.
So, Warren, what are some of the causes of fires that occur on the roof?
Great question. One of the big sources of fire from on that roof is wind-borne embers, wind-borne firebrands, we'll call them sometimes. There's specific fire tests called the burning brand test of combustibility on top of the membrane, on top of the cover board. Now, there's a lot of talk around WUI, which is Wildland Urban Interface, coming from the fires in Hawaii, the fires out west. We get fires back here on the East Coast as well, brush fires, that sort of thing. So that's really about burning brands, burning embers that are airborne, landing on that roof, starting a fire, burning down through the roof system into the home or commercial building below. So using a hard cover board like cement or gypsum will help the fire performance of that roof, because you're waterproofing, weatherproofing, whether it's shingles, for the most part asphaltic, whether it's a commercial low slope membrane. Those are petroleum-based products. They've got fire retardants in them, but they're still combustible and can burn. So having that we know gypsum is inherently fire resistant. You're not going to burn through it.
So we talked about fires maybe starting from the outside on top of the roof. What about fires inside a building?
Fire from within, that's generally called Class 1, and you can meet that requirement with our DEXcell boards as well. Also, some buildings, depending on where they are, what's around them, will require what we call a roof ceiling fire rating. P assemblies is what they're called in the industry. So that would be a layer of 5/8 DEXcell in the roof above the roof deck, and then it's going to tie into gypsum in the ceiling system in part of the building below. So that will give you a 1 hour or 2 hour fire rating for P assembly. So Class 1 would give you that fire resistance from within, and then the Class A gives you fire resistance from without. So, Chris, while we're talking about Class A and talking about fire ratings, let's talk about slope. Earlier in the presentation, we talked about low slope roof definition is 2 and 12 or 3 and 12. So as you increase the slope of that roof, you increase the opportunity for combustibility in that roof system. We talked about the waterproofing, weatherproofing membranes having some fire resistance, but a steeper slope makes it harder to maintain your fire rating. So DEXcell Cement Board, DEXcell Glass Mat, DEXcell FA will give you unlimited slope ratings in that roof. So increase your slope. The DEXcell Cement, the DEXcell Gypsum will help decrease the combustibility of that roof system. So it adds a lot of versatility in designing that roof system. And again, we're protecting the membrane, we're protecting the insulation. So unlimited slope is an important feature of hard cover boards with gypsum and cement cores.
You and I talk a lot about just in the building, our day-to-day activities. We talk a lot about the data centers that are being constructed right now. And you mentioned, a lot of these data centers are double-layered systems. Maybe touch on what is a double-layered system on these data centers? What makes those unique and beneficial?
Yeah, great question, Chris. And not just data centers, but we're seeing this type of assembly used a lot. We like it. because we get to sell 2 layers of gypsum, and they're just being upfront about that. But so the 2 layers of gypsum in those systems play different roles. So Chris, to help illustrate what we're talking about today, I brought in some samples. So I've got a 5/8 inch piece of DEXcell. We've got some insulation. We've got some membrane. So if you're listening to this version, we'd really encourage our listeners to also watch the video, because you can see then the assembly pieces go together. You would have a piece of 5/8 gypsum on the deck below, and that would give you your 1 hour fire rating if you needed it. Typically what's happening is they're attaching a vapor barrier. Again, the vapor barrier is going to keep moisture from within in the building, or moisture from without, keep it outside. So DEXcell FA or DEXcell Cement Board with a vapor barrier attached to it. Then you're going to put your layer of insulation on top of that, followed by a 1/2 inch or a 5/8 inch piece of 5/8 FA cover board. And then you're coming with your, this is a single ply membrane, a piece of TPO. You're coming with your weatherproofing on top of that. So
it's a robust system right there.
Yes, so we call this the substrate or the thermal barrier, not thermal for insulation, but thermal for fire. We're protecting the insulation, we're protecting the weatherproofing. And so if you look at a roof assembly today, this, petroleum-based membrane, not cheap. A lot of your cost in your roof today is your insulation board. And you're finding, we're seeing a lot of systems with, because of the energy codes, generally it's a double layer of insulation, 2.5 inches, 3 inches thick. Sometimes you can have 7 or 8 inches of insulation. So a lot of your cost in your roof assembly is the insulation.
You gotta protect it.
So using the fire rating below, the fire rating above protects that insulation. And the ultimate is to protect this waterproofing, weatherproofing membrane. Now, one thing to point out is when you're looking at new construction, the cost of a roof assembly accounts for probably less than 9% of the cost of the whole building. Roof litigation, leaks, blow-offs, poor workmanship, that accounts for about 90% of building construction litigation. So gravity is working against us as well. So it's so important to have the right system, the right assembly to keep that moisture out of that building.
Let's go back to the heat thing. Why is that so bad for the roof?
Yeah, great question. One of the important things, gypsum board, as we know, is inherently fire resistant. But also, one thing that we know about gypsum board, it also acts as a heat sink. So if you think about a sunny day, and here, whether it's in Charlotte or Portland, Maine, or San Diego, California, on a sunny day, this roof surface can get very hot. This is a white membrane. Sometimes you've got black membranes or darker membranes. The white is there for reflectivity. But what happens is, as this membrane heats up, then the heat doesn't have anywhere to go. So you can get to 180 degrees, maybe hotter, up on that roof system. And if you think about if a cloud comes over, you got these heating and cooling cycles. So you're in the sun, a cloud comes over, that temperature of that roof surface drops. So it drops dramatically. The sun comes back out, then that temperature bounces back up. So on a molecular level, it's just a little bit like taking a paper clip here.
Oh, you brought one.
Yeah. Nerds always carry paper clips. You need to know this, Chris. So what's happening on a molecular level with that heating and cooling, it starts to break down the molecular components of this roof membrane. So if you have the membrane without a cover board or an insulation-based high-density cover board sitting right on top of that insulation, what does insulation do? I get to ask you the questions now.
Keeps moisture and heat out.
Yeah.
Or in.
Insulates. Keep the cold out, keep the heat out. So what happens is the insulation is doing exactly what it's designed to do. It sits and keeps the heat out of the building. But where does it keep the heat then? Keeps the heat in the membrane. So heating, cooling. And again, this is your waterproofing layer. So if this is compromised, cracks, breaks down, then you start to have leaks and problems in your roof. So the gypsum board what it does is it absorbs, having the gypsum in that system, that will help absorb the heat. We call it a heat sink. So heat passes through the membrane into the gypsum board. When that sun comes back out, instead of having a spike at the top, or when the cloud comes back over, instead of having a spike, it helps soften, helps round out that heating and cooling. So that helps to protect on a molecular level the performance. Because then, just like bending this paper clip, oops, we got a break.
Yeah.
Oops, we have a crack. The membrane gets brittle. Somebody walks on it, you get a crack. You start to get moisture in your system. So
big problems.
Yes, big problems. So having that gypsum board, again, it's protecting the membrane above it by helping to absorb some of that heat. It has to release the heat back out. But again, it takes the edge off those spikes of heating and cooling, and that can happen hundreds of times in the course of a day. That roof system heats and cools.
Let's talk a little bit about this insulation. And I hear you talk a lot about HD ISO, high density ISO. How is this different than HD ISO? And we obviously know this kind of insulation can be used with DEXcell, but can HD ISO also be used with DEXcell roof cover boards? So
great question. So your typical, your polyiso that you're using for roof insulation, that's going to be probably 20 to 20, they call it 20 or 25 PSI ISO. So you can take it with your finger, you can compress it. If you walk on it, you can feel it compress a little bit. HD ISO is an alternative cover board. It's higher density than this 20-pound ISO. It has a density of about 80 to 120 PSI, so it's higher density than regular ISO, but cement cover board can have a PSI of 1,300. Gypsum-based, our DEXcell and DEXcell FA have a PSI of about 700 to 900. So polyiso is used, high-density polyiso is used a lot as a cover board. That's why we like to make the distinction between hard cover boards and some of the other technologies out there. HD ISO isn't going to help you with that heat sink that we talked about there. Generally, when you go into higher wind uplift applications, you'll need a gypsum or a cement board. So there's applications where HD ISO works.
What about R value? How does HD ISO affect R value versus?
It adds to the R value of the whole roof assembly. Most of your R value is going to come from your 2.5 inch multiple layers of a regular ISO. You will get more R value from an HD ISO than you get from a gypsum board or cement board, but the HD ISO is used as a cover board. It's additive, but it's used as a protection of the ISO, not so much as an additional layer of insulation protection, if that makes sense.
It does. What DEXcell roof cover boards act as barriers against that heat sink that you were talking about earlier?
They all do. You would probably have our quarter-inch glass mat, quarter-inch DEXcell FA, and there's not a lot of mass in there, so you're probably going to want to use a 1/2 inch or a 5/8 board in there for cover board, just to have it's the mass in the core that gives you that heat sink capability. So you want to use a thicker one, or our 7/16 or 5/8 inch DEXcell cement board would help act as a heat sink as well. So really all four of them, including the very severe hail board.
So let's talk about hail. I just moved from Texas, big time state that has to deal with a lot of hail issues. Does DEXcell have a roof cover board that addresses hail, and is that something that needs to be taken into consideration?
Hail, yes, we do. So We have a couple different approaches for hail. One is for multiply systems. We've been talking about single ply here a lot, but multiply would be 2 or 3 layers of a membrane, like a base sheet, a cap sheet. In a multiply system, we call it mod bit or modified. Then 1/2-inch DEXcel is tested in those applications, and 1/2-inch DEXcel FA works in those applications. For single ply, and single ply is probably 75 or 80% of all your roof systems is going to be single ply. So there's multiply, mod bit. You've got those multiple layers there that help with your absorption of that, the impact of that hail ball. If you have a 60 or a 90 mil membrane, that's it. We have a product called DEXcel FA VSH, and that applies to very severe hail for single ply situations. So Factory Mutual, for a number of years, has had hail ratings for moderate and severe. Probably 5 or 6 years ago, they added a category called very severe hail. And the whole idea is Factory Mutual is a testing company. They're also they're even bigger insurance company. So the whole intent is let's design roof systems that will withstand extreme events to minimize insurance claims, to minimize buildings being closed. So we always say use a hard cover board whenever you've got expensive equipment, a data center, or expensive people, hospital, school, office building. Let's protect our expense. Or even in retail, you got millions of dollars of inventory in a home center or in a retail store. So we need to protect that building, not just protect the inventory, but to keep these buildings operational after an event. So DEXcel FA VSH is our single ply solution there. And what's interesting, just last month, Factory Mutual, again, your old state of Texas where you lived, was pretty much all covered by the very severe hail map. But it goes up to North Dakota. It's extended. They extended the map last month, so it goes farther west. Most of Colorado even extends now into Missouri and Illinois. So severe hail events occur everywhere, and that very severe hail rating is covering a greater piece of the country. So we have a number of system manufacturers out there who offer DEXcel FA VSH as a single-ply solution for very severe hail.
Well, it's great to know we have a product that addresses just about any need. You travel a lot, I travel a lot. A lot of times as we're going out the elevator, we look out and we see these big commercial buildings, and we see people roaming around up there, maintenance people. So how does DEXcel address that? Is that another added benefit of having a roof cover board on a commercial structure, to help prevent damage with heavy equipment and people walking around on those roofs?
Absolutely. And that's a great point, because we've talked about very severe hail, and very severe hail is getting a lot of attention, but it's the human impact that I think has a greater impact day to day on the life of a roof. And just like you said, you've got people up there. Not everybody up on that roof is 150 pounds like I am. So,
or me.
Or you. So it's walking around on that roof, moving equipment. A lot of buildings today a lot of building owners want their buildings to be solar ready. So they're putting solar systems up on their roof. Need for hard cover boards. So if you take a piece of insulation with the membrane on it, as you walk on it, then eventually that insulation will start to crush. It won't disintegrate, but you can start to have depressions in that roof. And what happens is, if you get these low spots, when it rains, if the roof isn't sloped right, you get a little bit of ponding water in those depressions from walking. A little bit of water is like a magnifying glass. Remember when we were kids, you take a magnifying glass on a summer day and burn a piece of paper with the sun? Same thing happens there. So we talked about that molecular breakdown with heat sink. water, sunlight through water is like that magnifying glass on that piece of paper. So that will break the membrane down faster. So having a cover board to protect the insulation from getting depressed or from getting crushed underneath will help the performance of the roof. Also, if a workman drops a tool, there's some puncture resistance in roofing systems, but having that hard surface underneath the membrane with the cover board is going to help from penetrating or poking a hole in the roof with a drop tool. Or if their HVAC systems, putting up new, old, anytime equipment moves around, that you can compromise the membrane. So it's all about keeping the moisture out of the building, and a hard cover board helps with the human impact. So that human impact doesn't get talked about as much, but it's probably a greater force, a greater threat to the roof than hail is.
These boards just about do it all. I mean, we've talked about hail, we've talked about moisture, vapor, thermal, people, and how they impact roof cover boards. One thing we haven't touched on, we hit on it a little bit earlier in the beginning, wind uplift. How does that play into this, especially in those, I think about Florida, hurricanes that blow through Florida. How does wind uplift affect roof cover boards? And, what are some of the better solutions to address that?
Yeah. Wind is probably one of the greatest threats to roof, for roof blow off and all of that. So almost in every case, having a hard cover board in that roof system will enhance the wind's performance. So let's button our top buttons, and let's nerd out here a little bit, because this is where, I don't know if mine will, but and I forgot to bring our pocket protectors. So when you look at wind, we have a wall sheathing product that we can talk about another day. But so when that wind blows against a wall, that's positively pressured, but that wind has to go someplace. So it moves off the wall, blows down the side of the building. That's what we call shear. It's trying to pull the cladding or pull the siding off the building. As the wind hits the back side of that building, it curls, the wind comes down the side, curls around. It's pulling now on the back of the building. So we call that wind load on walls. And the thing is, tomorrow, the wind can be blowing from this direction, so now the negative wall is positively charged, and then the other wall, the back wall, that's has negative forces pulling on it. But on the roof, as that wind hits, it blows up and curls over the parapet. Now we call that wind uplift. So the wind will come up, swirl around behind the parapet, so corners, perimeter, very important, and then that wind will blow across the surface of that roof. So we call it wind uplift. So that wind is trying to pull that roof system up off the decking and try to pull it off. And there's great videos out there on YouTube of hurricanes and wind roofs blowing off in hurricanes, that type of thing. So using a hard cover board, whether it's adhered, DEXcell FA, or a mechanically attached DEXcell glass mat roof board, a hard cover board, again, protecting the insulation, protecting the waterproof below, will enhance your wind uplift performance of your roof. So, and there's different ways of fastening, different ways of adhering for the corners of the roof, for the perimeter of the roof, and then the field of the roof. So it's an engineering study on how you design that roof system. But using a hard cover board, whether mechanically attached or fully adhered, that's very important. So you think about Florida, where you have lived in the past as well. Pretty much every roof assembly in Florida is going to have a hard cover board in that system, because you have enhanced wind rating. But then you can come here to Charlotte and maybe downtown, where you've got some wind tunnels between buildings, or certain heights of buildings, you need enhanced wind performance in those assemblies as well. So you're really talking about Brownsville, Texas, all the way up to up the coast of Maine. You've got high wind requirements, maybe not as much as Florida with the hurricanes, but you've got high wind requirements even up in New England that a hard cover board will enhance the performance of the roof.
Are there ever cases where a contractor or building owner or architect would value engineer out a roof cover board and maybe say, you know what, this HD ISO product, I think I can get the thermal characteristics that I'm looking for. I think I can get the cover board, hard cover board characteristics that I'm looking for. I don't need all these additional layers. Does that happen?
It does a lot. And a statistic we haven't talked about, we talked about construction litigation with roofs. But if you look at industry statistics, it would say probably less than 1 in 3 buildings have a hard cover board or have any kind of cover board on them. So using HD ISO will enhance the performance of the roof. If you need higher wind uplift, then using a hard cover board like cement or DEXcell Gypsum cover boards will enhance the performance of the roof. So people will say, who's your competition? Is it high-density ISO? Is it another cement board or gypsum manufacturer? We like to say our greatest competitor is no cover board. Mm-hmm. If you look at the statistics, 1 in 3, I think probably last year the low-slope roofing industry was about 5 billion square feet. Less than 30% of that by industry statistics said they had a cover board on those roofs, whether it's hard cover board or a softer cover board. So the value engineering, I don't think happens so much at the consultants and architects recognize the need for it. Using a cover board does add cost to the roof assembly. But if you look at the investment that you're making in insulation and the investment that you're making in your waterproofing, whether it's a single layer or a multiple layer, I like to say you're adding right-sized cost using a cover board. So it is going to be a more expensive assembly, but you're like for all the benefits that we've talked about these last few minutes, that's going to enhance the performance and extend the life of that roof. So value engineering, it's an interesting term.
Sure.
But we're taking cost out. But when you take cost out, sometimes you're taking performance out as well. So beware. And if you look at roof warranties, if you want a longer warranty on your roof, a 30-year warranty from the system manufacturers, I think all will require a cover board. 25-year warranties, I think those will all require the use of a cover board. Again, we like to talk about the performance of hard cover boards. Even 20-year warranties on roofs should have a cover board to extend the life of the roof for all the reasons that we've talked about so far. And again, expensive people, expensive equipment, if that's going to be your building, and whether it's computers or home center lumber and plywood and paint, or a discount store where you've got a lot of inventory in a Target or a Walmart, then and you're making an investment in your building, you're going to want to use a cover board to protect that investment.
Warren, I think this is a great place to wrap up. I always learn so much from you anytime I just get a chance to spend a little bit of time with you, and this certainly was no different today. Always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us, and I'll talk to you here soon.
Thank you, and hopefully we can talk again.
Absolutely. Thanks, Warren. All the resources we've mentioned today will be added to the show notes. All our podcasts can be found on your favorite platform or by visiting nationalgypsum.com/podcasts. If you have any questions or an idea for a topic, email us at podcast@nationalgypsum.com. National Gypsum Company is the exclusive service provider of reliable, high-performance building products manufactured by its affiliate companies and marketed under the Gold Bond, Proform, and Permabase brands. The National Gypsum name has been synonymous with high-quality, innovative products and exceptional customer service since 1925. The information provided in this podcast is for general information purposes only. For specific building or design questions, please consult with the 1-800-NATIONAL Construction Services team or your regional National Gypsum Construction Design Manager. Always use products in accordance to the manufacturer's recommendations.